Hello? Can you guys see us? Let's see what happens here. Oh, hang on. YouTube's coming online.
There we go.
Yeah, they can. Hello, guys. How are you? So this is going to be an interesting one. We've never actually done anything like this before. I just lay out what we're going to try to do today. It's not a live cast in an FPL kind of family sense, though I'm sure some off-stage kind of bants will no doubt occur at some point. We'll try to check the chat every now and again. Instead, this is kind of a little bit similar to the Scoutcast, and our heroes Joe, Andy, Dave as Granville, and of course Mark. And we're going to try to kind of record the pod normally. You guys get to watch this time for our kind of special 50th pod. If we seem a bit strange and a bit mechanical, don't worry. It's just us doing kind of weird pod stuff. Every now and again, we may say something like, "Oh, hang on, I got that slightly wrong." Hopefully, Nick will not me do that too many times. But that's kind of, we're going to be recording the actual pod here, but hopefully putting on a decent show for you guys as well. And we'll definitely take questions kind of at the end at certain points. We'll just kind of see what's going on and what people are saying. But we're going to try to do the pods and shoot the pod like kind of normally. And then we're going to kind of dip in and out of chat, as it were, throughout the show. Nick, you all right?
Yeah, I'm good. Thank you. Looking forward to it. It's going to be an interesting one anyway. It's a first time experience for both of us, so bear with us if we make any mistakes. But like Tom said, we're just going to be whittling through the pod. It's not a live show or anything. It's just us recording the pod live for the first time.
What is slow mode? I don't even know what this is. Apparently we've got to come to some sort of strange mode on.
Okay.
I don't really know. I don't really know what's going on.
Yeah, we've no idea
what is slow mode. Is it? I hope. Can someone say in chat if that's like impeding you, or like being weird? Seems like a little bit behind as well. All right. You almost ready? You got everything?
Is it actually saying we're live for sure?
Yeah, people are saying hello.
Okay, brilliant.
People can hear you saying, "Oh, we live, Nick."
I seem to have lost a link for some reason for the chat.
Oh, it's in admin. Oh yeah, okay, yeah. Apparently the chat is limited. That's all.
If you go into the live dashboard, it says we're offline.
No, we're not. No, definitely not. Hang on. Oh yeah, hang on. Sorry guys, hang on just a minute. No, it says we're online though. We're live now.
Okay. Do you want to send me the link again? No, just click that.
It's just not happening yet. Same one.
Okay, I think I've got it working now. Hi, 2 guys, 1 cup.
There we go. Looking good. Now, how do I change this setting? I'm seeing if I can figure it out. As you can see, we don't do this very often. Optional features. Oh, I don't know. I don't know why slow mode's enabled on that one.
It seems to be working anyway.
I see. Hang on. I see. I don't know. Sorry, guys. Let's see if I can change that setting, then we'll get going. But if not, then we'll just have to do it. Probably not too chatty anyway. Oh, hang on. There we go. Right. That should be off now, so you should be able to chat freely, hopefully.
Cool. Brilliant.
Okay. Right. Let's get going then. So, there you go. You'll get to see what we actually do and how silly we actually are. I know people often say we have no bants. Probably true, but we'll do our very best here. All right, Nick, ready? 3, 2, 1. Hello. So it's after game week 8 and we're back. It's a bit of a different pod this week. Not for you guys listening. It should hopefully be around the same. But because of the fact it's our 50th podcast and we're streaming this one live to an audience, probably consisting of our mothers on multiple accounts, let's be fair. But hello, everyone, and welcome. We hope our faces aren't too disconcerting. And yeah, be prepared for a few stumbles that inevitably don't make the final cut. Nick, how are you?
Very good. Thank you, Tom. Yep, excited to be online for our 50th pod and also proud to get to it. We must be doing something right. Anyway, just to say quickly, of course, we are Who Got the Assist. You can find us on Twitter at WGTA_FPL, and you can use Spotify, SoundCloud, or wherever you like to listen and subscribe. So what are we talking about today, Tom?
Yeah, so we're live, and we want to make sure we do the solid show. We're not going to do anything too meta this week. Moreover, we're going to focus in on the fixture turn after the international break and think about how we can attack the next block of 4 fixtures between game weeks 9 and 12 before the final international break of the year.
That sounds great, and thanks for the questions, guys. So let's start with the game week reviews quickly. Do you want to start then, Tom? How did you get on?
I actually have a decent one this week, Nick. I don't know what's happened to me. I seem to have become characterized as a bit of a patient FPL manager, which is against
That's
form.
unusual, yeah.
I know. You know what they say, like someday it's going to be fine. And I've got 2 free transfers. I resisted the Harry Kane urge, and hell, cheaters always cheating. We're in London on Friday, and I think because of that, like I was away from Twitter, I was away from social media. Obviously, I would have been working really, really hard, but I was away from those things, and I think that like that kind of saved me in some ways from being tempted to kind of get Harry Kane in. Like as it was, Eden Hazard got me points. Doherty 15-pointer, Richarlison as well. But the full stack of clean sheets really helped. The Edison random bonus, I don't know where that came from, helped. Robertson was on the bench. Like I should have benched Walcott, but I can't complain too much. Like up to 255k. So the comeback from missing Kun in game week 2 continues for me, and it's nice to go into the international break, like not having made a horrendous kind of mistake. It would have been so 2016, 17, so 2017, 18, Tom. Yeah, to have made that sort of error, wouldn't it? To get Kane in and just be like fuming throughout the international break with like a 50-pointer. But yeah, no, it's refreshing, shall we say? How about you?
Yeah, you did very well for a rare change. So I scored 68 points, which was 18 above the average. I guess that's a pretty decent week, to be honest. I mean, the star men for me were the Wolves defenders again, 24 points from Doherty and Petruchio, and that's now 46 in 2 game weeks for that double act that only costs 8.9 million. It was almost a full house for me actually at the back with a Trippier 7-pointer, 6 for Alonso. The only sort of error there was my decision to play Wan-Bissaka ahead of Robertson, which was a bit of a dodgy one. Elsewhere, I guess in my team it wasn't that rosy. Hazard got his 14-pointer, but I didn't captain him. Salah blanked, Maddison and Kane blanked as well. I was just shouting at Kane, is this it, when he just got his 1-pointer? But I mean, the only saving grace, I guess, was that the men I sold, David Silva and Aguero, blanked too. So the difference, I guess, between me and you this game week was the Hazard captaincy, considering you outscored me by 14 points. And if I captained Hazard, I'd have got 28 and equaled you. But I went with Kane. Luckily, Aguero blanked and got 1-pointer as well, so it wasn't too painful.
Yeah, I mean, we'll have some questions on you specifically on what you can do with Kane later on. But no, it sounds like it's your first kind of captain blank of the season. But I'm due one now. If we can ever say anything's due in FPL anymore, because 8 in a row I've nailed the captain at least, despite not kind of getting the Kun Aguero explosion in game week 2. Right, let's move on to our kind of main talking point today. It's a fairly meaty one, and today's focus is perhaps more on the little guy. So last time we did a podcast, we looked at the top 4 and the fantastic 4 players, and also Sterling, which kind of made us look at those kind of teams a lot more as well. This time, we're going to look at kind of for the next block of 4 teams, and teams who have a favourable fixture list, and maybe kind of how we best attack those fixtures and the assets and the teams we may be looking at, and giving each a little rating. I think increasingly, Nick, it's worth looking at these kind of blocks in between international breaks and other breaks. And we think it may be good practice ahead of Christmas to look at games in phases and how we may attack this in the near future. So yeah, we're going to cut this into sections. We're going to talk about clubs with 2 good fixtures, 3 good fixtures, and 4 out of 4 in terms of next few fixtures being good. And we'll have a look at their key players and some team stats as well, just to help you out in your decision making. Should we start with Bournemouth then, Nick? I know you've had a little look at these guys already.
Yeah, for sure. So Bournemouth have, I guess you'd say 4 decent fixtures, though some people would say 3. They've got Southampton up next at home, then they play Fulham, then they've got Manchester United, then they play Newcastle. So I mean, they're playing Man U, but the other 3 are pretty decent fixtures. Bournemouth have been actually, been smashing this season so far. They've scored 16 goals so far, 4th highest in the Premier League. And they're starting by playing the 5th worst of defence, then the worst in terms of goals conceded, then United, who've actually conceded 14 goals, and then the 4th worst defence, Newcastle. But in total, they've actually made 99 goal attempts, which is the second best and have the second best goal conversion percentage in the entire Premier League with 16.2. So I guess the key men to talk about are Josh King, Callum Wilson, and Ryan Fraser.
Yeah, absolutely. Bournemouth are just a really interesting one. Like, the more you look into them, like watching them, it's very tidy football, isn't it? It's very incisive passing. And in kind of football manager parlance, they focus on working the ball into the box. I've got a good stat for you, Nick. Bournemouth are currently seventh behind the big six for touches inside the penalty box of 193, which is just 7 less than Arsenal and Man United. Interestingly, Man City are top with a mammoth 348 touches in the penalty box. Chelsea at 245 and Liverpool at 243 have over 100 less touches. Yeah, I thought that was pretty mind-blowing with the City number. But Bournemouth being there is quite interesting. Like, they were seventh last year too. Southampton were randomly sixth. Talking about Bournemouth, I guess we've got to look in the context of there being that 10-man game week for Watford last week, in which they ran riot. But yeah, I'd agree that kind of Fraser, Wilson, and Josh King are the guys to be looking at. Should we start off with the midfielders then, Nick?
Yeah, for sure. So I mentioned Ryan Fraser. Obviously, there's also David Brooks that's worth mentioning as well.
Yeah.
So Fraser, one of our questions was sort of whether he was a seasoned keeper or whether it was time to chuck him. And it's a bit of a dodgy time for Fraser owners because he does have a knock. I think Ben Dwinery tweeted about Fraser saying that McLeish had said that he'd failed a medical with the Scotland doctors and we had no choice but to send him back. But there's a question here: is this just another international break injury? Because after the last international break where he had an injury, he came back and he got an 18-point return, and a lot of people had sold him thinking he wasn't going to play in that Leicester fixture, and then he went and absolutely smashed it. So those that have Fraser are, obviously a little bit concerned about this injury, but I still think it's worth keeping him and watching and waiting, obviously, with him. There's also that risk now with Stanislaw being back, that he won't start the next fixture with the likes of Brooks, who we mentioned, doing very well. He's now scored 2 goals in 2, though he looks like he should still be drinking a juice box with his lunch.
Yeah, it definitely does. Sarah saw him the other day in the half, and she said, "Is he still doing his GCSEs?" It definitely looks like a very young guy, doesn't he? Ryan Fraser, off Scotland duty again, injured. He's joint third midfielders, 48 points, 3 goals, 3 assists, 0.5 million price rise, 6.0, and his ownership has skyrocketed from 4.5% when I owned him on my wildcard in game week 3 to 22.7% now. He's created more big chances than any other player with 8. He's joint third for chances created behind Hindu Monkey's favourite Siggy. He's actually on fire at the moment, 23, and David Silva, 22. So how David Silva hasn't performed for you, Nick, is an absolute abeyance, really. He's created the chance every 28 minutes, and he's a bonus magnet too. So the yellow card is the only thing that stood between a mega Pascal Gross style kind of free bonus point haul versus Crystal Palace in game week 7. David Brooks, you mentioned, is a very tidy player as well. Our designer Matt really loves him as a Sheffield United fan. He's had the most shots in the box amongst Bournemouth midfielders with 9, 4 big chances, just 8 and 2 for Fraser, and he scored 2 goals in 2 games, as you said. So 5.0 in the cheapo bracket. He looks pretty decent, but I think Ryan Fraser's assist points or assist points potential, I guess, are the 2 things that kind of draw the eye about Bournemouth. And I think 6.0 Fraser maybe is a little bit reaching peak expensiveness, but you still wouldn't criticize someone for bringing him in, I guess.
Yeah, for sure. I think that there's definitely interesting options in the Bournemouth midfield there. So if we move on to the attack now, there's obviously a choice between 2 players, Josh King and Callum Wilson. I've done a little bit of a comparison of the 2, actually, Tom. So both are priced exactly the same price currently at 6.3, and both have actually played the same amount of minutes so far this season with 697. So it's a little bit, in terms of their sort of price and appearances, it's very even. I think King has the added advantage of being that penalty taker, but has actually made less goal attempts, with only 14 so far compared to 20 for Wilson. But Wilson has had slightly more chances created. So Wilson's been more of a creator this season with a ridiculous 7 assists so far. He's created 11 chances compared to King's 9, though King seems to be the crosser within the team. He's made 13 crosses compared to just 4 by Wilson.
Yeah, I hate that feeling when I found the same stats as you. That's what always makes me laugh. I mean, yeah, you're right with Wilson. I mean, I looked at my favourite stat, big chances missed. Like, he's top for big chances amongst all strikers, right, with 10. He's missed 8 of them. Incredible, really. Like, he would be far and away the top striker if he could convert those chances. As you said, like Josh King, he's on penalties. He's had 5 big chances, and 2 of them have been penalties. and King is outstatting Wilson. But one stat really stands out for me over the last four, which is an open play XG of 2.0 for Wilson, King at 0.99. So with Wilson, you're looking at a striker who's expected to score a goal every other game, which is 19 goals a season if that were true. So that's a perfect for 6.3. And as you mentioned, Wilson's also a creator, and he's third for big chances created in the entire game at the moment across any position. He's joined with Jose Holebas of early season fame and yellow card shame. As you mentioned, I guess those two are an interesting kind of one to size up for people. Kind of watching them, I guess you say Josh King is perhaps more of a natural kind of dead-eyed finisher, and Wilson's a bit more of a confidence player. Like, he can look absolutely terrible, and then if he starts kind of converting those shots or getting those shots on target and scoring, like, he can go on a roll. So what do you think about Bournemouth then, Nick? What's your kind of view on them? Like, I know you've got Fraser. Like, is it a team that you're looking to double up on? Would you be advising people to at least have one of them? How do you look at them?
I would definitely advise people to at least have one of them. They're obviously performing really well. If you take aside the Burnley match, they've been a really exciting team to watch, and they've had a prolific attack. Actually, only three attacking players, Sterling, Aguero and Hazard, have actually scored more points so far than Ryan Fraser and Callum Wilson. So, yeah, definitely Bournemouth have been really impressive so far this season. I think there is a case for doubling up. I have been looking at the forwards and whether I can fit them in my team. But yeah, they've still got a good run of fixtures as well. Southampton, like we said, up next, in Fulham, United, Newcastle. So I think there is a case for doubling up. Last time we talked about doubling up, they played Burnley next and lost 4-0. So you never know with the likes of Bournemouth if they can sort of maintain the form that they have currently. But at the moment, they're definitely a team to be looking at.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, people might say that, it might be a bit late to be jumping on Bournemouth. Like, the issue is that looking at the teams that they're about to face, they're playing Southampton, who are sixth, and Fulham, who are third in terms of shots conceded. And Fulham are the side first for shots conceded in the box. Saints are sixth for shots conceded in the box on top of that. So I mentioned the touch in the box data earlier on in terms of what Bournemouth's kind of key headline stat is. Those two things combined make me kind of think that, yeah, Bournemouth have a good chance of doing well against those teams if we kind of look at the Watford game and think, yeah, there were 10 men, but the underlying presence seems to be that Bournemouth are actually a fairly good team, and as you said, very exciting going forward. So I guess moving on to Wolves then. They're another interesting one, aren't they? Like, I think we said at the start of the season with FPL Stag, could they make the top 8? Like, and it looks like they really can. I mean, defense is where everyone's looking at the moment, and they're equal with Liverpool, joint bottom for shots in the box conceded on 42. City are the bottom of just 29, and they're joint bottom for big chances conceded with just 5, which is the same amount Callum Wilson has created. Wolves and Nick, what are your views on these guys? What have you had a look at with them principally?
Well, obviously, I've been quite a big advocate of the defence so far, and I've been doubled up with Doherty and Petruchio, and they've been brilliant for me. So I've started by looking at the defence. So if we start with Wolves fixtures, they've got 2 decent games coming up. They've got Watford at home, then Brighton away. After that, it gets a little bit trickier with Spurs and Arsenal. So it'd be very interesting to see how actually they do against those teams, because if they can get clean sheets against the likes of Spurs and Arsenal, then they're definitely season keepers. But it's worth actually comparing them a little bit to the likes of Burnley last season, who had a similar start, only conceding 6 goals in their first 8 and managing 3 clean sheets. And previously, we've also seen the likes of West Brom, Southampton and Leicester in their title-winning season prove themselves as fantastic options at the back, and perhaps unlikely options at the back. And I actually fondly remember Southampton in the 2014-15 season, where they only conceded 33 goals in 38 games, and I had a double up for the entire season, pretty much the entire season that year, of Bertrand and Fraser Forster, which really did well for me. So yeah, I definitely think that Wolves look like, even though they're sort of a promoted club, with a midfield of Moutinho and Neves and a European Championship winner in goal in Petruchio, they definitely have the potential to sort of be season keepers in the defence, especially Doherty. I'm sure you've got some stats on Doherty, but I've also got some stats. But do you want to
Probably
start,
the
Tom?
same ones, to be honest.
Yeah.
I was just going to say that after the international break as well, like if people are looking at Tottenham and Arsenal and saying, "Oh, I've got to get rid of those guys," after the international break as well, on game week 13 and 14, they've got the fated Huddersfield and Cardiff double up. So who knows? Maybe we'll even be buying Jimenez at that point. But yeah, no, I've got some stats on Doherty as well. Like, I mean, in terms of the defense, it's very difficult to look past him at the moment for me. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of people who are looking at him and they've got 4.4, 4.5 to spend on a defender. In which case, I can see there's a case, Johnny, for example, he's creating a chance of having a shot every 18 minutes. You've got Bolly, who's looking like a bit of a bonus magnet. He's winning. He's kind of generating a BPS point at a higher rate than most other Wolves players. But Doherty is kind of the man, isn't he? Joint fifth for chance created amongst defenders, joint fourth with 2 big chances created. And yeah, I mean, what else have you found on Doherty, Nick? What else can you dig up to back up the Irish Alonso?
So yeah, he is really the Irish Alonso, being sort of second for goal attempts out of all defenders. He's made 12 goal attempts, just behind Alonso 16, but he's actually had more penalty box touches than Alonso. He's had 24 penalty box touches, which is more than any other defender, and also more than the likes of Sigurdsson, Pogba, Ryan Fraser, and Andre Schürrle. So Doherty really seems to have that sort of attacking edge to him. So he's getting clean sheets and he can get attacking returns. So that goal was coming. It wasn't a surprise that he scored at the weekend because he's been so attacking, and he's continuing to benefit from rises in true Stephen Ward style. He's now actually 0.3 more expensive than teammate Johnny. So if you don't have enough for Doherty, you can afford Johnny, who's been pretty prolific as well going forward. He's had 8 goal attempts, scoring once, and also had 20 penalty box touches, which is only 4 less than Doherty.
Yeah, that's pretty decent, isn't it? I mean, at the end of the day, what was interesting was that Doherty is second for shots in the box with 11. Top is Michael Keane of Everton. He's had 12 shots. They've all been in the box. Incredible, really. Any Fantasy Football Scout members out there should compare Doherty with Alonso over the course of the season. It's really scary how close they are. What point per cost value that is for Doherty is absolutely insane. Your man Petruchio, Nick, is another interesting one I think that's worth talking about. If we kind of both agree and we both have Doherty, we both had him, I can see why people are just like, yeah, I mean, I've missed the bus on that one. I think it might be worth, if you can just fit him in, of just jamming him in there and just getting it over with. He's one of those sorts of players at the moment, given the stats. But Petruchio is an interesting one. A key stat for him, Nick, he's second amongst keepers who played every game with in terms of save percentage of 85.3%. Alisson's top with 85.7, so not very far behind. And Edison is third and 81.3. And he's faced second most shots outside the box with 13. Joe Hart is top with 14. So he's a very worthy set and forget. And he serves you quite well, hasn't he, Petruchio?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, when I saw that he had the £4.5 million valuation, I just jumped straight on that because I thought that was a bargain. I expected him to be priced at 5.0 with his international pedigree, but the fact that Wolves were promoted team seemed to put them in good stead in terms of the prices. So I was very happy with that 4.5 million valuation. Jumped straight on him at the beginning of the season, and yeah, benefiting from him. I guess the last player I guess to talk about from Wolves is Jimenez. He's only 5.6, but he's started every game so far this season. Seems to be they don't have too many attacking options going forward, but he seems to be the leading man. He's very kindly priced, so he can step in as a third striker, and he has been getting assists and the occasional goal, a couple of goals so far. And in terms of goal attempts, he's getting plenty of attempts. He's had 24 goal attempts so far, which is only 2 less than Harry Kane, and joint fourth for forwards.
Yeah, just one more thing. Sorry, and guys, this is one of those things that, if you're recording a podcast, I'm going to magically put this when we're talking about Petruchio. Just one more thing on Petruchio, Nick, before we move on to Jimenez. Get it? We're going to talk. He rotates very, very well for those mad people who like rotating 4.5 keepers. He rotates perfectly with Fabianski between game week 9 and game week 21. So that gives you a home away rotation of Watford at home, Brighton away, Burnley at home, Huddersfield away, Huddersfield at home, Cardiff away, Cardiff at home. That looks pretty good, doesn't it? Crystal Palace at home, Bournemouth at home, Watford at home, Fulham away, Burnley away, and Brighton at home. So yeah. Nice synergy between Wolves and West Ham. In terms of Jimenez, you're right. He is. It does look like kind of the main attacking option. He's been involved in 56% of Wolves' goals so far. He's very unselfish. He's prone to a bit of a shocker on the field. I remember, I think it was against West Ham when he was played through on goal and fell over his own shoelaces, didn't he? He's had 7 big chances missed. Just behind Wilson, he level with Wilson for chances created, and yeah, he's had a bit of a weird career. Jimenez. He played a lot in his home country, but when he moved to Benfica, it was like he was never anything more than the bench option. So there's an argument that he's kind of finding his feet, but he does seem kind of to be essentially very unselfish. So it looks like, for 5.7 he is now, Nick? I think that's quite a decent bench option. I mean, at that price, you'd be happy with 5 points per game, wouldn't you?
Yeah, for sure. I think he's a very good value option. Like I said, he's getting plenty of opportunities, getting plenty of goal attempts, but he has been a bit, rubbish in front of goal. He's been snatching at a few of the chances. The Burnley game, there were a couple of instances where he really should have scored. But the main thing is he's getting into the positions. He's got midfield players who are setting him up constantly, and there doesn't seem to be too much competition for the start as well. So yeah, he's definitely an option if you are looking at tripling up on Wolves or doubling up and investing in a cheap attacker. I think he's a decent option for sure.
I think that's quite an interesting one. I don't think it's going to make it into the pod because it's a little bit of a longer conversation. I probably we're not going to have right now. But it's interesting to think that as assets in of themselves, regardless of who they play for, like having those, you've had Petruchio and Doherty, and other people may have kind of Petruchio, Doherty, Bennett, and Johnny, some combination there. We saw that Matt Kearney, boasting the carp on Twitter, has had the triple up, and that's kind of paid serious dividends the last 3. There's definitely a case here to look at the double up just on the quality of the team itself and the value of those assets, regardless of who they're playing for, right? Like the clean sheet potential has got to be pretty damn high for players in that price bracket, and they're going to overperform, I think, that PPC points per cost. And next year, when your points per cost bit, assuming we're still around, I think that they're going to score very highly, aren't they?
Yeah, definitely. I can imagine the likes of Jimenez. A lot of these Wolves players will be top of our metric next season. But the following season, of course, there'll probably be an extra £2 million, so we won't be able to afford any of them. So enjoy it whilst it lasts.
Exactly. You can imagine Doherty being a 5.5, can't you, next year?
Definitely. I mean, if PVA is a 5.5, if he continues this sort of form, he'll definitely be a 5.5 at least.
I think he's probably crossed the threshold already now, hasn't he? Yeah. Right. Shall we move on to the Foxes of Leicester then? So we said that Wolves are. We have said the Wolves are definitely worth kind of going for. The Foxes of Leicester then, they've got this. We're moving on to kind of 3 out of 4 ain't bad. They've got Arsenal. That could be an easy game. Some people, probably not though. Arsenal away, West Ham at home, Cardiff away, and Burnley at home the next 4. And the Foxes are quite an interesting team as well. They're 5th for bottom in terms of 5th from bottom for big chances conceded with 12, level with Spurs. So their defence is looking quite good. Going forward though, it looks a little bit disjointed at times. And I saw there's a good article in the Leicester Mercury earlier on today about Jamie Vardy, for example. But looking at the data, the players aren't looking too bad, are they, Nick?
Yeah, I think there's definitely some options within the Leicester team. I invested in Maddison last game week. He's on set pieces, corners. I think he seems to have taken up that mantle of the talisman in midfield as well since Mahrez has obviously moved on to gladder tidings, and he's showing consistency of returns. He's relatively active going forward. He's had 17 goal attempts so far, which is the joint highest for Leicester alongside Jamie Vardy. And talking about Jamie Vardy, I mean, when we looked at points per value last season, he was actually the best value forward last season based on this year's prices, and he netted 20 goals last season. And after that Arsenal game, Leicester's fixtures are pretty decent. So I think he definitely is an option. One of our sort of friends, Tack, he actually put the captaincy on Vardy last game week, which didn't work out well. But it was a decent punt. Actually, there was another interesting option that you probably aren't expecting, Tom, that I looked at in the Leicester attack, and that's Ian Acho.
Oh, yeah. Good old Nacho. If Aguero scored, we buy him. Oh crap, Aguero's come back.
Yeah, believe it or not, Ian Acho is actually currently outscoring Jamie Vardy, and it's only priced at 5.9 and has notched up 4 assists so far, which is just joint second highest for forwards and could potentially be another attacking option, though not necessarily one that we're going to wholeheartedly advocate.
No, definitely not. He is the reigning African Player of the Year on my Football Manager game. Anyway, Jamie Vardy is an interesting one. He's obviously against the next game against Arsenal. I did kind of frame that as maybe a bit of a questionable game, but he has got 6 goals in 6 games against them. He's scored the second most against them in the Premier League. The first of Liverpool with 7 goals. So he does like playing them, and I think there is something about just having Jamie Vardy in your team for that sort of big game. I think we've all kind of had an inkling about it, and it's kind of just the fact that Leicester do like the counter attack, and against those teams where they are at kind of the away side and they are expected to be pinned back, then Vardy can make the most of it. Vardy, as you said, is still looking okay. He's further big chances with 7, and he outscored Firmino, so he was definitely one of the kind of the bigger attacking threats last season. But Maddison's probably the one that I'll be looking at. Like, he's going to be up to 7, but Leicester's run of fixtures remains very, very good indeed. Right. So after Arsenal, between game weeks 10 and game weeks 15, so over 6 game weeks, they didn't play any of the teams in the top 6 last season, which is definitely kind of scope for points during that time frame. And Maddison's 7th for chances created 15. He's actually below Seri at Fulham, who had 16. Looks involved though, and he's responsible for Leicester being joint 3rd for chances from set plays with 6. So I think maybe it's kind of a binary between Vardy and Nick and Acho. I mean, in defence, you've got Maguire at 5.5, who's maybe a little bit too expensive, but he has had 8 shots in the last 4 games, so he's averaging 2 shots a game at the moment, which is pretty good. And also a tip from Stefan and our beloved FPL Stag as well. Ricardo Pereira. 22 pen box touches, 4 goal attempts, 3 in the box. I mean, that's level 4 attempts with Shane Duffy, almighty Shane Duffy. So that's not too amazing. However, it's the case that when you watch Leicester play, like, he's actually genuinely really, really involved, and people don't understand sometimes that, like, there is if a player is kind of out of position, that he can be really, really good looking. He can be a really, really good asset, and I think that potentially, if he does kind of come to fruition as an out of position 5.1 right winger in defence, that could be really good value, and it could be a case that almost go 4-3-3 or something like that. Do you like a player like that, Nick?
Yeah, I think there's scope for that sort of player. Obviously, I guess someday I might have Maguire in my team, I might have Pereira in my team, but I just feel like there's better options out there in defence. We've seen, there's a glut of sort of premium attacking options now, it seems, with like Robertson, Mendy, Trippier, Alonso, all vying for a place in our team, and even like cheaper options we mentioned, like Doherty or Holebas at Watford, and fitting all these guys in, it's not quite possible. And with the Leicester defence, I just don't trust them at all. They seem terrible defensively. We seem to have Wes Morgan getting himself sent off every other game. They're just not very good defensively. And I just don't think it's the right moment to invest in a Leicester defender at present. But like I said, someday I might do.
Yeah, I think the time for Wes Morgan potentially having a route into the England team is all over, isn't it, really? Okay, do you want to take a quick break there, Nick, and then we'll move on to Liverpool in just a second?
Yeah, let's take a break.
Cool. All right, let's consult the chat. Hello, everyone. How are you doing? Is this vaguely what you expected? Just two people talking about FPL to a ridiculous extent.
I'm going to pop to Lou on that note. Yeah. So I'll be back at the set.
No, do the tag. Yeah, I think there's definitely something in like Maddie being the Siggy of Leicester. I think that's an interesting idea. Like, I think I had Matt Ritchie last year. I mean, you may laugh, but he was looking very, very good at the Championship, and actually quite good for Bournemouth. And the irony was he got an assist at the first game week this year. But Matt Ritchie was the guy I was looking at and thinking, yeah, he could be the Siggy, the cheap Siggy of that could be there. I just don't know. But Maddison, he's one that I'm definitely interested in. I think he's definitely reaching kind of hygiene factor status almost, just because of how good those fixtures are. I don't know. I think that he could be something that, if you do have him in, he's just one similar to Richarlison almost, that you could just kind of stick in, just leave there for the rest of the season, sort of thing. Apologies. Which is just kind of that's an ideal asset to me. 17.7% now. I think that'd probably be higher in the top 10k, wouldn't it? All right.
I'm back.
Do you want to say hello to chat? I'm gonna have a wee at the moment.
Yeah, it's Tom's turn to have a piss. Hey Marco. Hey Lee. I think just a blank for me this game week, Mr. I am here as well. I don't know if it's moving to my screen too often, but yeah. Hey, 2 guys, 1 cup. Thanks for joining us. But yeah, it keeps jumping to the curtain. We'll come on to that in a little bit, Vinyl Richie, in regards to my Kane plan. That's one of the questions. So yeah, I'll save that for now, but I'll let you know in a bit. Yeah, no crying, Lee. Took a little bit while to settle him tonight, but they're both upstairs, so I've got to probably speak a little bit quieter because otherwise I'm going to annoy my wife. He's probably trying to sleep with the baby, so I'll start talking a little bit quieter.
You haven't abused the audience yet, Nick.
I haven't been abusing anyone. Don't worry.
Cool. All right. Shall we? Let's get on with it then. There's no curtain. It's not a stage curtain behind me. It's just London. It's East London at night. Unfortunately, it's nothing too exciting. And we're fulfilling many a stereotype here, Nick. I just realised because I'm like with the 2 bearded weirdos in our bedroom who are talking about FPL and talking to a wider audience. But hopefully you guys are enjoying it, and that's what matters. Okay, we'll go back into recording mode now. Ready, Nick?
Yeah, I'm ready.
Do you want to introduce Liverpool?
Yeah, sure.
3, 2, 1.
So we're back, and it's time to talk about Liverpool. So Liverpool actually have a really decent run of fixtures. They play Huddersfield, Cardiff, then it's Arsenal, and then it's Fulham. So they're playing essentially 3 of the sort of worst teams in the league based on the amount of goals conceded so far. And Huddersfield and Cardiff both really struggled so far this season. Fulham as well, after that sort of 5-1 mauling by Arsenal, they look really terrible defensively. So, I mean, if this was pre-season, we'd definitely be talking about doubling up with the Liverpool attack. We'd say Salah was a cert, he's a must-own. Mane, we'd say, is probably a must-own as well, or Firmino, or one of the 2. But I don't feel like we're going to say that, to be honest, considering the last 4 Premier League games. We've actually only seen 2 attacking returns in total from Mane, Firmino and Salah, and that's also excluding a very drab performance against Napoli in the Champions League. So it's really 5 games. So I think the Fab 3 just don't seem to be firing, and there seems to be a bit of a vision of division between the bunch. However, for me, I'm rigidly sticking with Salah, and I'm probably going to be captaining him. I mean, I did a quick sort of comparison of the key stats between game week 1 to 8 this season and last season, and he's actually coming out on top actually with a higher XG so far this season, with 0.7 goals a game for game week 1 to 8 compared to 0.5 goals a game. He's made more goal attempts, and he's actually also had more penalty box touches. So the quality of his final ball, I guess, has been a little bit concerning, and this is been obvious for people watching him play, and it's reflected in his shot accuracy, which is only 37.5% for game week 1 to 8 so far this season, compared to 53.6% at the same time last season.
Yeah, I mean, you only live once, but if someone was kind of coming to Earth, their first impressions of Earth, if it was the FPL community, would be that we talk about Salah the whole time. I'm almost kind of slightly bored of talking about it now to some extent. So, I mean, as you said, the stats are still very, very good. Top for attempts, 32. Big chances, 8. He's also top for shots off target with 10, and big chances missed with 6 of his 8 big chances. He's gone to the Callum Wilson school of finishing, no doubt. Liverpool themselves, they're 4th for chances created with 82, they're 5th for shots 115, and 4th for chances in the box with 80. And as I mentioned, there's the highest save percentage. But I mean, I guess it's trying to disentangle for people. I mean, we're not going to attack the Mo Salah versus others question today. Like, you've got your own points by now. You've probably heard a plethora of opinions on it. And I think that you've just got to come to your own decision now. We're not going to help you too much. We're going to read off some stats, but that's probably about it. But I think what's interesting is talking about the defense, Nick, because many people are looking at those kind of next two games particularly and thinking, well, maybe alone one, maybe alone two, and thinking, well, that could be 12 points in the bag per game. That could be 24 points over the next two games minimum. I mean, if you look at Robertson, he's only had 2 shots. If you look at TAA, he's only had 6. There's no great shakes in terms of attacking threat. I mean, in terms of creative potential, assist potential, Robertson's third for chance created with 12, second for chance created with 4. A chance every 60 minutes created, chance created every 60 minutes, which is brilliant. That's worth double digits. I mean, do you think it's worth having somebody else alongside Robertson, or are you going to? I'm sticking with just Robertson. It's just me. Like, do you think it's worth having that kind of double up just because of how good the fixtures are looking?
Yeah, I mean the fixtures are really good, and Liverpool just seem sort of very strong defensively so far this season. They're performing brilliantly. I think the signing of Van Dijk and the signing of Alisson has really shored up that defence, and I think there is a case for doubling up in the defence. And I would have said, obviously, Robertson's my favourite. Obviously, he seems essential, but I would have said the other one to own is Trent Alexander-Arnold. But I feel like there seems to be a bit of a rotation risk now with him, and that's obviously he didn't start the last game. Lovren's now back, and Lovren's obviously going to want to start and play every game. And then you've got Joe Gomez who can play as right back, and in the big games, perhaps Joe Gomez will be preferred as the right back over TAA. And I guess that's a little bit of a risk for those that are looking to double up. And I certainly wouldn't waste one of my transfers in terms of getting another Liverpool defender in at this moment in time.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. I mean, I think tactically what happened was that with TAA leaving bags of space behind him and Robertson leaving bags of space behind him, that Klopp against Man City didn't want to have be able to be attacked from both wings, Guardiola. So I think, Klopp. So I think Klopp probably looked at that and just thought, well, at least I can kind of shore up one wing, which means playing the centre back. Gomez, I think he is technically a centre back, or at least that's kind of his preferred position. But as the right back, kind of a full back with a defensive remit to kind of mean that they overextend on the left hand side, they overload on the left hand side, but at least they've got some kind of solidity elsewhere. Like, he can tuck inside to allow back three and Robertson's bursting forward. And I guess that kind of means that overall, that you can't really be looking anywhere else apart from maybe Robertson. Like, BVD for a long period of time, he'd had no shots at all, right? So it's looking like kind of Robertson or bust, or hoping that a TAA set piece gets converted. He took a corner the other day and managed to get 11 points for his owners. But it feels like, as you say, that there's going to be a little bit of a risk in some of the games. I guess you wouldn't be doing that for the long term. You'd be looking at TAA and thinking, well, over the next kind of 3 or 4, I'm going to play him. But I guess bearing in mind the fact that Liverpool do have a decent run of fixtures, actually, like, until game week 17, they only play Arsenal of the top 6 from last season. But in terms of when there are European games, between game weeks 11 and 12, there's a European fixture, 13 and 14 European fixture, and 16 and 17 European fixtures. So they do have a lot to contend with, a lot of rotation to get through. We may even see the forgotten man, Alberto Moreno, who's wanted by Barcelona, Nick, to replace or at least back up Jordi Alba, which I thought was the most hilarious story I saw today. I guess moving forward, we're going to talk about it a tiny bit before we not go into it too much. Obviously, Mo Salah, we both got him, and if you don't have him, I think it's more of an interesting question. But we both got him, and it's just one of those things that I think most people who do hold him are going to be looking at these next 2 games and thinking, yeah, you're drinking a beer on the last chance saloon. And if he doesn't perform in those 2 games, he is out on his ear, and we're going to have a bath with all the money that we've got left over, frankly. But yeah, I think it's very difficult to see if you do own him, why you'd be looking to sell him, and if you were kind of on the outside looking in, I can see why you'd be reluctant to kind of buy straight away. And part of me would be thinking, Nick, against Huddersfield, that you just leave it and see what was going on. What do you think about that?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I'm going to be leaving it. I'm definitely not going to be selling him. I'm not, he's actually, he's had quite a number of transfers out so far, which we'll cover in market forces. But I can't sell him with those fixtures. Obviously, they're not performing at the top at the moment. But, I'm not going to be I don't know if I'd buy him either, because it would just cost. It probably cost too much. There'd be too much shifting around, and they seem, like we said, obviously just underlying stats are great, but he doesn't seem like his finishing's very good so far this season. Just seems a little bit out of sorts. Hasn't seemed like the same Mo Salah that we saw last season. And the likes of Shaqiri's going to be wanting game time. We've got Daniel Sturridge performing well as well. Klopp's going to potentially look at those fixtures and think, this is the perfect game to start Shaqiri and rest Salah, and that's always, a slight risk as well.
Yeah, I think so. I think now he's got the strength and depth, and now you've got a couple of players who are pushing for starts. You're right that if it was me playing Football Manager, I'd be looking at those fixtures thinking, well, this is a great time to rest my star men. Let's hope it doesn't happen. Imagine like the carnage on FPL Twitter or something like that if we all captain Solari into Huddersfield and he's rested and comes on for the final 10 minutes. But I guess against Southampton last season, you got a brace, didn't you, off the bench? So you're still always in with a chance for him. I mean, you've got Mane. The top stat for Mane, as always, is his kind of selfishness and that kind of thing. He's top for offsides amongst all midfielders with 10. And we've got Firmino. Firmino's an interesting one, isn't he? Because he was the second striker du jour for a lot of the season last season. This season, he's had 15 shots, 11 in the box. He's way out of the top 5. But you might be able to back him over the next few weeks and maybe have him as an interesting differential in your team. Just because I don't know, it's worth having an option in that second striker slot beyond the other guys that everyone's looking at, including me. Like I'm not advocating by Firmino for myself, but he's owned by 22% somehow still. I don't know whether that's just people who own him from last year. I don't know whether that's dead teams. I don't know what that is. Like, would you be looking at Firmino, Nick, in terms of the striker slots?
I think he's definitely an option. There's actually another player at the same price that's probably ahead of him in terms of people's picks right now. And it might be a good opportunity, unless you've got something more to say about Liverpool, it might be a good opportunity to move on and talk about Arsenal, because the man I'm referring to is Lacazette, Tom.
Do it.
So Arsenal, their fixtures they're a mixed bag, actually. They've got Leicester at home, then they've got Crystal Palace away, then they've got Liverpool at home, and then Wolves at home. So, they're not playing the worst teams in the league, but then they're not necessarily playing the best either. I haven't actually owned any Arsenal players at all this season. And this is the first, after that sort of Fulham mauling, that was like the first game of the season where I seriously thought about whether I can actually cover Arsenal at all, whether I need an Arsenal player in my team. In defence, you've always got Bellerin, who remains an option. It's pretty kindly priced, but I don't know. I think there's better. I've said it already, but there's better attacking options out there, like Trippier, Mendy, and Robertson, which has meant that Bellerin hasn't really got a look into my team. What do you think about the Arsenal defence? If you start there, Tom.
Yeah, I mean, we are an interesting proposition at the moment. Like defensively, we're 7th from bottom. Defensively, I don't think it's quite working to some extent. Like well, hang on, that's not entirely true actually. I guess in terms of defense, you thrown me, Nick. You thrown me. That wasn't the point I was going to say. I guess in terms of the defense, in terms of offensive assets, at least, I'm not particularly interested at the moment. Like for me, to some extent, like clean sheets are obviously the bedrock, like the hygiene factor. But going forward, the creative intent, the creative the attacking potential is what I look at. And Bellerin hasn't created very much. Neither has Monreal. Like Bellerin's only created 4 chances. Monreal's only created the same as Monreal. Sorry, Bellerin's created 4 chances, the same as Monreal. He's had 5 attempts. Bellerin only 3 in the box, and I guess he'll be the only one you'd be kind of vaguely looking at. With I think just generally we're looking a little bit unconvincing. Like great wins against Fulham and Everton. And we're now we've now on line 9.
You're doing very well in the league after sort of a stuttering start. You're now sort of equal. I think you lost your first couple of games, but then you've won everyone since. So you're sort of equal in terms of points as us Spurs. So yeah, a little bit of a rivalry again. It's a little bit exciting, but yeah, you made some decent points there on the Arsenal defence. I think one player that's probably worth a look at if you're feeling a bit of a differential perhaps on your wild card is Bernd Leno with Petr Cech, I guess, out. with a hamstring injury, not necessarily back until the 3rd of November, according to the websites, but whether he actually gets back into the starting 11 is another question. Berneno at 4.8 is perhaps a really decent goalkeeping option to have a sort of goalkeeper in a top 6 side at that price.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that was always kind of something that people had that we always had our eye on, as it were, and he could definitely come into the mix now. We've got decent fixtures, and I think that there's definitely a lot of mileage in having a goalkeeper from, I guess, historically fairly good defence in your team. The only thing to bear in mind is 14 game weeks 14 and 15. We play Tottenham and Man City. I mean, Tottenham's an easy game, Nick. Tottenham Man United. Tottenham's a very easy game, as you know. But Man United is probably going to be quite difficult. So I think that you've always got to have these kind of things in mind. But he's a very good set and forget. And if you are on your wild card, he would definitely be an option that I'd be looking at. I was just going to say, Nick, but I think a bit of a point that I'd like to make here, just as an Arsenal fan, is that we're 7th from bottom for big chances created. And I think that some of it is due to having no fluency because we haven't got Özil in the middle. We're 11th for shots in the box with just 59. Man City have doubled this, 113, followed by Chelsea with 94 and Spurs with 84. We're joint with Bournemouth in 10th for the chance creation rate. We only have a chance once every 7.8 minutes. I looked at Özil's stats as kind of the key creator. Last season, he created a chance every 28 minutes. This season, it's a chance every 56 minutes. So on a per-game level, it's really hard his effectiveness being on the wing. And I think that's definitely impacting our players. And I guess, unless you've got anything to say anything about the Arsenal midfield, Nick, we should move on to Lacazette and Aubameyang and talk about them a little bit more.
Yeah, no, I think it's worth mentioning Aaron Ramsey. He looks like quite a decent differential at the moment. He's only got sort of a ownership of 1.8% at the moment. So I think he's someone that if you are looking to go off template, he's perhaps a decent shout in the midfield. Though there has been a little bit of rotation. Less said about Mkhitaryan, the better. After a lot of people got stung by him earlier on in the season. But up front, obviously you've got 2 key men. You've got Lacazette and you've got Aubameyang, and Aubameyang smashed it last game week, actually, even though he didn't start and he was unwell. A lot of people sold him and got punished, but he hit form finally. Obviously, you owned him in the preseason, but has got rid, so you didn't get the points. But yeah, he's definitely another option up front. And then there's Lacazette, obviously, who's a little bit cheaper than Aubameyang as well. So people are finding it easier to fit into their teams. I guess Lacazette had a bit of a stuttering start last season to his sort of Arsenal career, but he seems to be discovering that form that he showed in the French league when he played for Lyon and scored 28 goals in 30 appearances.
Yeah, don't forget, I think there was more than 10 of those with penalties, actually. So he's never gotten over 20 goals a season without penalties. But yeah, they're an interesting pairing, aren't they? Like Aubameyang and Lacazette. Did a quick comparison of them. Aubameyang's had 16 shots to Lacazette's 19. Damningly, 56% of Aubameyang's shots have been from outside the box. Lacazette is sit for big chances before, which is the same as Aguero, but Aubameyang has had 3. But both have a shot accuracy of under 50%, which is a little bit worrying considering both of them are fated for being very accurate kind of predator strikers who only take a shot, unlike kind of the archetypal Harry Kane, when they think that they can score. So yeah, under 50% for them is quite scary. And the fact that we are taking not as many shots in the box as a lot of other teams is a little bit of a warning sign for me. Aubameyang tops Lacazette for conversion with 16 shots, 4 goals. But Glenn Murray, Nick, tops goal conversion among strikers at the moment with 38.5%. It's quite an interesting one. I guess, well, there's an awkward segue, but let's go with it. I'm talking about a few teams who have a little bit have some good going for them, I suppose. Should we talk about Brighton, Nick, and talk about that lot? Because, like, I guess they've got the best run, haven't they, going forward for amongst a lot of teams. Like I noticed on a couple of metrics them going around Twitter, they've got the best kind of next 6 or 7 games of any of the sides, and you can see it. Like until game week 17 when they play Chelsea, they play no teams in the top 6. Last season, a difficult game was Everton in game week 11, but maybe it was the case for looking at someone like Murray or someone like Knocker, or of course the goal machine, which is Shane Duffy.
Yeah, I know Shane Duffy's a favourite of yours, Tom. It was quite famously last season, Duffy and Dunk were sort of right at the top in terms of goal attempts for defenders, but didn't manage a single goal between the two of them. And obviously, Dunk, I think he scored about 3 or 4 own goals as well. So he was in negative equity and still is in negative equity in terms of goals in the Premiership. But yeah, Duffy seems to be your man, doing very well for you. I'm not too keen on bringing him in. I can't fit him into my team unless I was to upgrade Wan-Bissaka with a little bit of spare cash from a Kane to Aguero downgrade. But it's not someone that I'm particularly looking at or interested in taking hits to bring in a Brighton defender at this moment in time. In midfield, you mentioned Knockaert at 5.5. I think he's a very decent priced midfield enabler. He's another one who had sort of a very tough sort of opening season in the Premier League. Had a few personal issues he was going through as well at the time. There's an interesting interview actually. I think he did for either the Guardian or BBC News. It's worth reading at some point if you get a chance. Talking about sort of personal issues and sort of mental health is very interesting. But yeah, he had a tough opening season after sort of being one of the leading scorers in the Championship, probably the player of the season in the Championship in Brighton's promotion campaign. But he seems to be finding his feet now. He's scored 1 goal so far this season, but also had 15 goal attempts, which is right up there with top midfielders, sort of same amount as Richarlison, only 2 less than Maddison. So he's up there with the other guys who are a little bit, about 1 million or 1.5 million more expensive than him. So I think Knockaert's a really decent shout in terms of the midfield, and he's very kindly priced at 5.5. And then you mentioned Glenn Murray, the old warhorse. He's still going. He's turning up with the odd goal, despite being 35. He seems more dangerous than ever, and has managed to somehow amass 5 goals on the season, on the sly so far this season. And he's had 14 goals in 27 in 2018. But unfortunately, like sort of fellow Englanders, Josh King, Troy Deeney seems to be another one that's been overlooked by Southgate for his style of play.
Yeah, absolutely unbelievable. I mean, the big warning sign with Brighton are the fact that they're second bottom for attempts with 66. They're fourth from bottom for chances created for 27. And they're the second lowest. They've got the second lowest minutes per chance with one every 11 minutes and 30 seconds. So you're looking at a team who is struggling for creativity. Obviously, there's one man they're going to call who is Pascal Gross. He's been injured or whatever for a little while, left out the team for Yves Bissouma. But I wouldn't be expecting a fireworks from them at the moment. I mean, 5.5 for Knockaert sounds a decent idea. I mean, Murray, I've looked at him. Like, he looks a little bit better, not a little bit better, but on the same level as Wilson. But they're just not creating enough and not doing enough going forward to make me think, I definitely need to get cover there. I mean, I did have a look at Duffy to try to big him up, but I find it very, very difficult to do that. I mean, Brighton have the highest cross completion rate, 32% success. Obviously, all of them finding Duffy, but Duffy's only had 4 attempts. Not so much I can talk about with him, to be honest. He's got 50% goal conversion rate. But, I mean, there's only been 4 shots and he scored 2 of them. So just a bit of a legend, really, but not exactly the kind of guy who's going to be setting your team alight week to week. I mean, I got very lucky with a clean sheet this week by all accounts. West Ham were looking very, very good for a while on Friday. I mean, I don't know how Brighton didn't concede for a lot of the time, but it's a bit annoying, isn't it, that you have a team like this that are about to come into good fixtures, I guess. I guess we should probably move on to Newcastle. That's a very, very good segue to move on to Newcastle, because Newcastle are bottom for attempts with 65. They're second bottom for shots in the box with 43. And the poor Toon Army have to wait 11 minutes and 48 seconds in between chances. And I don't know, Nick, I don't know if you looked at the data for them, but I found it very, very difficult, despite how amazing their fixture run is. I mean, it's seriously a sea of green. Like, they didn't face any top 6 team until game week 19, which I'm pretty sure is Christmas. Like, it's a great run, but they just look so difficult to pick a player from. Like, even Kennedy or whatever, there's no stats to back that up. Like, how are you looking at that? It's the ultimate fixture versus form, isn't it?
Exactly. I think Newcastle have had a really tough run in the Premier League so far this season. They played very defensively, and as such, there hasn't been too much happening in terms of attacking threat, and not much really to talk about. Obviously, Kennedy, I guess he's very kindly priced at £4.9 million. He could potentially sit there as a fifth midfielder in your team, and could come in for some of the games potentially if you're looking sort of for sort of a 3-5-2 strategy or something along those lines. He could fit in quite nicely and quite cheaply. But then I still think there's other options even at that price which are better, such as the aforementioned David Brooks at Bournemouth and Will Hughes at Watford. So I don't know. I'm not really a big fan of Kennedy. I think he is an option at his price, but not necessarily one I'd be looking at. The likes of Matt Ritchie hasn't really done much this season either, and he's too expensive at 5.9 to truly consider. You've always got John Joe Shelby if you want one of your players to get sent off, which he hasn't actually managed so far this season. But he's another option. We're clutching at straws a little bit here, as you can probably tell.
Fact, I met John Joe Shelby in Brentwood High Street fish and chip shop on the day he got his England cap. So I met him and said, "Didn't you play for England?" Just because I wasn't too sure it was actually him. Of course, I was sure. I was just trying to be nice.
Well, you're going to say you met him down to Sugar Hut for a second.
No, I didn't meet down to Sugar Hut. No, I didn't want to pay you £15 for a vodka cranberry. I met him at fish and chip shop. It was hilarious. Like, he was just like, "Yeah, mate, yeah, I play for England. Yeah, it's good. He's from Romford. He's from Romford, where I think As is from around there as well." Anyway, so yeah, it's very difficult, isn't it, to find a player here, I guess, that you're going to be really looking at. I mean, you've got Kennedy perhaps at 4.9, a little bit of an enabler, despite the fact there's not very much going for him. Maybe Muto will silence the critics. Jamal Lascelles, he's down to 4.8. He was actually the top 4.5 defender last season with 116 points, and he scored the most non-appearance points of 4.5 defenders with 56. Your man Stephen Ward, 47, and James Tompkins and 46 were behind him in the top three. Dubravka, the goalkeeper, like, I'd been looking at him for ages, thinking, yeah, I might get him in. Then I realised he was 5.0 and I thought, nah, not touching him. It's a shame that Mitrovic isn't in their team, isn't it, Nick, to be honest? I mean, just to kind of have a quick diversion here, because we were going to talk about Fulham a tiny bit. Like, Mitro is one of those who's an interesting one. I mean, Fulham have got over the next three fixtures a nice little run there of Cardiff, Bournemouth, and Huddersfield. They've got Liverpool after that. But Mitrovic is in both of our teams, and I think it's just worth kind of talking about him just for a little minute, Nick. Like, he's second for shots with 34. He's joint top for shots on target, third for big chances received, and second to Kun Aguero with a shot every 21 minutes, a shot every 15 minutes for Kun Aguero amongst strikers. Like, are you going to keep hold of Mitrovic at the moment? Like, the defense is terrible, isn't it? And things like that. But is he a man who you would keep hold of?
I wouldn't go near their defence for sure. They're absolutely terrible defensively. But with those fixtures, Cardiff, Bournemouth, Huddersfield up next, yeah, I've got to stick with Mitrovic, especially when you just mentioned all those underlying stats that I've also got here. That he seems to be so prolific going forward. I mean, he's matching Kane and Aguero for goals, which is the main stat to mention as well, and for half their price. So he's definitely a solid pick and the player that I'm going to be holding for the next three games, even though I guess he's been slightly disappointing in the past two, with a couple of blanks. He's still been sort of very offensive and very aggressive going forward. And I think the only other player that's worth mentioning for Fulham very briefly is Andre Schürrle. He's an option in midfield, and he's actually surprisingly second for goal attempts amongst all midfielders with 29 so far. Though it's also worth mentioning that most of these have come from long range, with only 9 inside the box, and only 10 of them have been on target. But still, at 5.9, I think he presents another potential bargain. And games against the likes of Cardiff, Bournemouth, Huddersfield could easily be in the points and get some attacking rounds for the next few games.
Yeah, I mean, if anyone's looking to confirm any biases, over the next 3 games, they're facing 3 defences whose numbers are thus. Cardiff are 4th for shots in the box conceded with 82, and 5th for chances conceded with 7, big chances conceded with 17, which is joint with Watford. Bournemouth are joint 3rd for chances conceded in the middle with 35, which for Mitrovic attacks, which is the same as Huddersfield. And Huddersfield are the 4th for big chances conceded, so there's definitely a lot of mileage even if you don't know Mitrovic, looking at him and thinking, well, maybe I'll fit him in for a little bit and then swap somewhere else. I mean, you've got Arnautovic as well, who I'm considering very heavily for my team this week. We'll talk about him later on. But yeah, hopefully that's a good little look at all of the different teams that are out there at the moment who are facing a good run of fixtures. Like, obviously Watford and West Ham are two teams also who could just start feature in there. Some in Pereira and Arnautovic we'll speak about in a little bit. But I think that's an interesting kind of set of teams, and it should give us more than enough to go on over the course of the next few weeks. Should we take a break there, Nick, and we'll move on to the features?
Yep, let's take a break.
Great. Boy. Hello, everybody. How are you doing? It's Dare. It's not a Gorillas theme. I just saw there's a guy called FPL Dare, I think. He's quite a nice guy. Saw him on Twitter a little bit. All right. I'm going to... The mum's pick. What's that? Interesting. All right. Okay, on that note, I'm going to go for a wee. I'll back a minute.
Okay. Present time again, guys. Drinking cider centre. Got some pear Copperbergs.
Just still up. Yeah.
Thanks, Jeff.
Still up.
Still going. Mum's pick. Which one of us sounds like Harry Redknapp? Probably me, because I probably sound a bit more Essex than Tom.
She was watching and she was like, oh, wait, it's gone. It's gone. Yeah, no worries. Who sounds like Harry Redknapp, Baron?
I think it must be me. I've no idea there if TAA is going to start. I'm not going to lie.
You should do like a winding the window down sketch. Oh, I just don't know.
More like Jamie Redknapp.
Yeah, I guess so. All right. Hello. All right. Shall we crack on with Nick? Yeah. We'll do the feature. Oh God, we're only on features, Chris. Okay. I'll start.
It's gonna be.
Sorry.
Do you want to start then? Yeah, you start. Do you want to start then?
Yeah, I'll do it, and then we can do it. Then we can. Yeah. All right. Yeah, I haven't said it's tough yet, Nick. That's what I'm worried about. Like, we've got to get one in somewhere. Like, guys, if you're not aware,
either, so you've got to get some more references in.
Guys, if you're not aware, Nick is contractually obliged to say, "Oh, it's tough," at least once a podcast. Otherwise, it doesn't exist. Like... No, I said Nick.
No, someone wrote that. Booster wrote that in the chat.
What a booster! Right. Okay. Ready? 3, 2, 1. Hello, so we're back and we're going to go for our features now. This is our regular recurring set of things that we talk about. Market Forces, Zombie League and the All England team. The first thing we're going to talk about is Market Forces. This is our section where we use our FPL NTI data to describe the movers and shakers in the transfer market. Nick, you're the man across the numbers. What are you seeing this week?
So the most transferred in player so far this game week is the aforementioned Matt Doherty. He's had 270,000 transfers in so far, 272,500 at the time of recording. And I guess that's really unusual actually for a defender of his price to be topping the market forces. And I guess it's a testament to his performances so far and the performances of Wolves, both defensively and offensively going far. So far this season. I mean, the guy's had 2 assists and a goal in the last 4 games, and the next couple of fixtures are still quite tasty for Wolves. I mean, we've covered Doherty in a lot of detail, and yeah, it's definitely a player that we're both very big advocates for. And, we were beneficiaries of that 15-point return this game week. And the player actually that's being transferred out is Halle Berry. So he's had over 210,000 transfers out, and I would hazard a guess that the vast majority of those are for Matt Doherty. And there's just masses of frustrated owners. And, obviously he's now suspended, which is the impetus to allow that straight swap to happen. Halle Berry has attracted a lot of owners with 34 points in his first 4 games. But after that, he only managed to score a single point in the next 4 and then got himself suspended. And I think Halle Berry is one of those players that is actually a great pick. He's on set pieces, he's on corners, he's creating a lot of crosses, often looks very dangerous going forwards, but he's the kind of man who will either get you 15 points or -1 because he's a card magnet as well, and Watford often concede a lot. So despite Watford's decent fixtures, because of the suspension, Halle Berry is being sold heavily.
Yeah, but owners have to be between love and hate with him. I mean, a key stat of Halle Berry, he's had 80 crosses so far this season. That's 20 more than Kieran Trippier. So he's definitely creating a lot. It's just the case that he's got the most. I think he's got the most big chances as well, with 5 big chances amongst defenders. But yeah, like, he's always a bit of a risk in terms of the disciplinary. And I think we highlighted, didn't we, a couple of weeks ago, that people were buying in Halle Berry. I think it was based on availability heuristics. He scored a lot of points, and people were like, "Oh yeah, definitely to get this guy in, definitely to get this guy in because he scored loads of points, yo." The reality was that he was very close to yellow card, and now that's happened, we're seeing the reaction of people going to Doherty. But I guess the 15-pointer is also abetting that.
Yeah, for sure. But second in terms of transfers in so far is Lacazette. He's nearly had 150,000 transfers. He had over 149,000 at the time of recording. But yeah, like I said earlier on in the pod, I've managed with an Arsenal player without one all season, but he's definitely making a serious case of being in our team. And I think the challenge with him is that you're going to have to sacrifice another one of the premium assets if you do want to fit him in your team. If you own him, even though with the fantastic forward, which is what we defined them as last game week, only one of them actually managed an attacking return, and that was Eden Hazard, who's also had over 148,000 transfers in so far this game week. And I think there's a room on fire every time you watch him. And he has been the runaway player of the season so far. I think everyone will be inclined to agree. Hazard's been showing a sort of level of consistency we've never seen from him before. He now actually has 7 goals and 3 assists to his name in only 8 games. And considering he didn't really play much in the first couple, that's incredibly impressive. So it'll be very interesting to see if he keeps up this sort of level form that he's presenting at the moment.
Yeah, exactly. I think this is the modern age, isn't it, that we're seeing a lot of people shifting around in terms of premium assets. So you mentioned, obviously, Eden has been brought in, but coming out are players like Mo Salah, who's been sold by almost 100,000 people now, and Harry Kane as well, 75,000 almost, who have sold Harry Kane. So it kind of makes sense, doesn't it, that people are looking at last week's scores and thinking, oh, actually, I've got this money to spend. I'm going to move it around and move between these premium assets. Eden Hazard, it kind of makes sense. With Harry Kane, it's a little bit confusing, isn't it? Because that amazing record against West Ham, he scored the 2nd most goals against them of any Premier League team. But I guess being able to mix and match or something like that is what seems to be driving the market sentiment at the moment to some extent. And I guess we can see that as well, Nick, can't we? In terms of the 4th most transferred in player this week.
Yeah, so that's Callum Wilson. He's had over 145,000 transfers in, but all those Bournemouth players we mentioned earlier are attracting a lot of new owners. Fraser's actually 5th with 100,000 transfers in, and considering we've not got actually any Premier League football for another week and a half, this is a classic case of that danger of making the early move, because a lot of people, probably vast majority, got him in before he was actually yellow flagged, and that there is always that risk of that early move. And some people will be feeling a bit sore now after bringing Fraser in, and now he seems to be perhaps injured. So there's, like we always say, especially in this sort of game week where you've got a long break, don't be hasty and make these early transfers. Have a little bit of patience with your moves. But it seems like, interestingly, Wilson is he's the one who's attracting most of the owners. He's had almost triple the amount that Josh King has, and I think that's quite interesting because, despite, I guess this is a classic case of Wilson having scored more points, because I think actually I would look at Josh King and think, oh, he's on penalties, perhaps he's the better option, and it's still very much up in the air as to which one is best out of the two.
Yeah, exactly. Like Josh King, I think it was a 5% ownership when last I checked, and it was 22% ownership for Callum Wilson, which is absolutely ridiculous in terms of how just the points total is leading people. And I think that's fascinating, really, that people aren't looking at. I think that aren't looking at Callum, aren't looking at Josh King, thinking he's just as good or just as much has as much chance of returning as Callum Wilson does. I think part of it as well, maybe dead teams. Like, because Callum Wilson, Josh King, there was a lot of hype before game week 1, wasn't there? And he didn't really perform, whereas Callum Wilson did. And maybe that is a lot of teams who were around between games 1 and 2. Like, they moved King to Wilson game week 1 and 2. Like, Clive and Accounting moved King to Wilson game week 1, and then never looked at his FPL team again, and will occasionally try to get involved with the banter. Like, it's that kind of person, isn't it? Which may be underlying a lot of these kind of numbers. Same with Richarlison. Like, Richarlison for a long time had more owners than Ryan Fraser, which seemed a bit mental to me. And that was just because of the game week 1 and 2, the people who were only playing for a very short period of time. I guess the final ones to talk about, Nick, is Wilfred Zaha, the final ones to talk about, Nick, are Lucas Moura and Lucas Zaha. Lucas Moura and Wolf Zaha. But Lucas Zaha, what a player that would be! My God, together, incisive, both holding up Harry Kane, both stopping him scoring points. Lucas Moura and Wolf Zaha. Lucas Moura has been sold by 83,000 people, and Wolf Zaha has been sold by almost 80,000 people now. And I guess a lot of people must be kind of moving around these mid-range assets and trying to hit. Just trying to hit points no matter what within that kind of 7.0, 7.5 kind of bracket.
Yeah, for sure. I think Wilf Zaha, obviously Palace had brilliant fixtures at the start of the season, a really good run of sort of 8 opening fixtures, and now it starts to really get tough for them. They've got Everton, Arsenal, Chelsea, Spurs, Man U as their next 5. It doesn't get much harder than that. And Zaha still has an ownership of 22%. And I think owners probably be slightly disappointed in terms of his attacking return so far. He has managed 3 goals and an assist, which is pretty reasonable, but he's had a fluttering of yellow cards, 3 yellow cards also so far, and his hasn't got any bonus points either. So his biggest sort of return so far this season, I think, has been 7 points against Huddersfield, which is not great. So he's been a little bit disappointing for people who, I guess, who sort of expecting him to really press on and prove himself as the best asset. In that mid-price forward bracket, and I think probably you'll see a lot of people that are switching from Zaha to Wilson with Wilson playing so well at the moment, and people doing Zaha to King as well. And I guess it's the same with Moura. He started off the season really well, but hasn't had attacking returns in a little while. So people are probably moving their cash around, looking at likes of Richarlison, who's had over 100,000 transfers in, looking at likes of Siggy as well, who's also had 97,000 transfers in so far.
I'm surprised by Siggy, actually. He's definitely been on fire for the last couple of game weeks.
Since I sold him, Tom.
Yeah, since you got rid of him, he appears to. I'm sure he probably looked at the Wgta Twitter feed and just said, right, that Nick has sold me. I'm going to go on a massive attack now. I'm going to smash it now just because Nick's gotten rid of me. But it's unlucky, isn't it? Like, how that. I don't know. Like, sometimes you do kind of look at players, don't you? And you do kind of get rid of players, and suddenly they just start to smash it. And you're like, well, there's something I did. There's something that did I text you something horrible? But yeah, it's very strange in that regard every now and again. Cool. All right. Should we move on to the zombies then, Nick? This is where we check on the progress of our shambling zombies in teams run by unspecified family members. This is our no chips, no transfers, no changes team. And I just want to shout out to FPL Singapore and Paul, Superstore Man on Reddit, for helping identify some newly reanimated zombies this week. So my bandhammer came down a little bit. How do zombies do this week, Nick?
Yeah, I mean, it was a bit of a zombie-related disaster for me. I mean, it's not hard to explain what went wrong for the team. It was only 37 points. Kane got them 1 point, and Arnautovic 1 point. I have Mahrez, who famously skied that penalty. He only managed 1 point as well. I also had Eric Bailly, who famously was substituted after about 18 minutes in the Newcastle game, and got me zero points. Yeah. My only returns were actually from David Luiz, who got me 6 points, and Matt Ryan actually finally delivering from goal with a 9-pointer. So maybe I'm going to start see some Brighton clean sheets, hopefully, from Ryan going forwards. Now their fixtures improve. But yeah, pretty bad. But I heard your zombies did pretty well, Tom.
Yeah, they did. They got 65 points, and 46% of those points were scored by Captain Aubameyang, who I thought was going to do an Eden Hazard this year and just be absolutely ridiculous. But unfortunately, that's not quite happened. But yeah, 30 points for the captaincy is pretty damn decent. The reality is that I've had 9 men for quite a while. I've got KDB, I've got Pascal Gross, I've got Christian Eriksen, I've got Tom Kearney in my midfield. So that's 4 of my midfield who haven't been playing for a little while. So I've only got Jota, who obviously scored a massive 3 points this week. But returns from Edison, assists for Young, Pereira with 7, Azpilicueta and Duffy both getting clean sheets, saved the day for sure. I've got 65 points. The zombie team, the overall rank isn't worth looking at. But I'm up to, now I've kicked people out of the zombie league, Nick. I'm in the top 1,000 of the zombie league. That's definitely
that's pretty impressive. You might have even have overtaken me. I'll see how I'm doing. Where am I? So the nightmare on Nelly Street is actually 671st. So now I'm still thrashing you.
No, it's absolutely smashing me. It's Aubameyang captain versus who did you captain? Kane? Kane or Salah?
Salah. Yeah.
Oh god, yeah. The next 2 weeks you're going to absolutely destroy me on this. Aubameyang pulls his finger out. But yeah, it's an interesting kind of time, isn't it, for the zombies? And yeah, hang on, let me just put out the team here. Sorry, 1 second. I had it open. So let's just catch up with the league quickly. So in first at the moment, it's still Blue Carefree, 77 points, and he definitely got a little bit of the rub of the green this week. Kennedy off the bench because TA didn't play, but yeah, 77 points, and his zombie team is in the top 20k. 16,000 in the world, the zombie team up 770 points for Blue Carefree. Hazard captain, and England's Josh King in the team for him. In second, it's Taralin, who got 94 points this week.
Very impressive.
Aubameyang captain, so I don't know how they got so high. But Doherty with 15 points, Josh King, Sigurdsson, all driving that there. In third, we've got Ryan Gaunt, Zombie Killers, who got a 70. In fourth, FPL Connor takes a tumble and with 57. And in fifth, Zombie Mango, Rob Hayes, also takes a tumble down to fifth. Quick shout out to 38 Weeks Later, which is quite a great name. Moreno Bruin. He got 97 points this week, which is absolutely ridiculous for a zombie team, to be honest. Clean sheets from Edison, Mendy, Robertson, Van Dijk, and Trippier for a 5 high defensive stack. Sigurdsson, Richarlison in the midfield, and Captain Aubameyang and Josh King doing the business for him. So very well done. I think it's still interesting, isn't it, just seeing how these kind of teams are going and how far away from our initial start of season perceptions the actual season has taken us. The final thing to talk about is the All England 11, the All England 15, I suppose. It's a bit of a poor week, actually. They're 300k or so last week, so they're level with me. But they've gone down to 842k this week, which shows how fine the margins are at the moment. 48 points, they're just 4 points off what Fans Football Scout would call a solid week on Twitter. No moves were made. Kane C, blank. Sterling, Maddie, Vardy, blank. But Josh King with 11-pointer. The Norwegian Callum Wilson got 14. But we'll take the 11 from Josh King. And then Walker, Bennett, and Trippier did some bits at the back. But there's no bench because TAA and Lingard didn't show. But 48 points is still okay. We've got 2 free transfers, and hopefully we'll be able to push our way up soon. But again, it's kind of instructive, isn't it, with the All England team? That last week they were just the kind of 300, 400k between that category. One bad week and something they just fall all the way down. So it's worth thinking about it, isn't it? But even if you are kind of struggling at the moment, like one good week and something, you are propelled to something approaching responsibility.
Yeah, for sure. I think the England team, there doesn't seem to be too many prolific assets out there that are sort of knocking on the door. So we'll have to think about what we do with those transfers. But it's a bit stop-start. A good week and then a bad week for them at the moment, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Okay, let's take a break there, Nick, and we'll move on to the questions at the end. Okay.
Just take a quick one.
Yeah, take a quick week. Yeah. Any thoughts on Goodmanson? Goodmanson's an interesting one, isn't it? I'm not too sure about at the moment. It's a bit confusing because I think the boat has sailed, and the next kind of couple of fixtures don't really fill me with much hope. To be honest, Varyn. I mean, you've got Man City away, Chelsea at home. It's one of those players who doesn't really sell themselves to me as being fixture proof, right? So my worry would be that if you did take the punt on a mid-price player like that coming into your team with fixtures like that you're basically paying for 2 points, aren't you? It doesn't really seem worth it for that. I'm going to do more of these. We'll have to see how horrendous the editing is. Like it's really difficult to mess around with it sometimes. Bye, Finesse. Thanks very much for joining. I had to edit this into something just a bit short, so we'll have to see what.
Should we crack on then, Tom?
Either way, man. I was just waiting until you came back.
Okay.
I'll be 2 seconds. Oh, some Duffy.
Yeah, if you're enjoying the stream, guys, just give us a like as well, and we'll have to think about whether we do this again. Like Tom said, it's going to be a challenge to edit, and it's longer than our normal pods as well. But it's all good fun. It's a new experience, and it's been enjoyable so far. I think Johnny is another decent option, Varun. We sort of spoke about his stats a little bit earlier, but if you're looking, if you don't have the money for Doherty, then Johnny at 4.4 would present decent coverage in the Wolves' defence.
And maybe having 2. I think that with Doherty, what you're going to see is that they can be a fall off now. I think the 2 fixtures that you have were the ones that he was primed for, if that makes sense. Like I don't know, after the international break, especially if he plays Republic of Ireland, they've got Watford and Brighton, so we can maybe see that he continues with a double figure hauls. I don't know. If I didn't own him, it's difficult because obviously we both do, and I think we both looked at him a couple of weeks ago, didn't we? And just thought, yeah, this guy needs to come in regardless because of what he was doing in terms of the underlying. Now there's definitely a temptation to kind of look at him like an Aaron Ramsey kind of character, like, oh, we can't keep continuing that. But what he's posting at the moment just makes me think, yeah, like I just get out of the way, frankly, and buy him in because by game week 13 and 14, Huddersfield and Cardiff, like, yeah, you're going to want Doherty in your team because he's almost guaranteed, barring injury, to play. And And those could be huge returns, really. That could be 6 points at least for 2 games. 12 points for an asset who we both bought at 4.4 and you'd be buying for 4.7. That's still pretty damn good, isn't it? A 6.0 PPG for a 4.5 million asset effectively is just mental. Like, I don't know why you wouldn't just think, well, I've just got to buy the main man here. Like, it's almost like one of those things that you want to do the obvious pick, don't you? And yeah. All right. Nick, do you wanna well, do you want to? Yeah, you're going to. Introduce this final section.
Yeah, sure.
Cool. All right.
I'm just gonna load up the league. The site seems to be a bit buggy actually at the moment.
Sound like I know.
Actually, I'm logged into the wrong account. I'm still logged into the zombies. Just give me a second.
Yeah. I'll just do the top 5 and then. I hope you guys are kind of enjoying the behind the curtain look at how a podcast tends to be. I can guarantee you that all other podcasts do exactly the same.
Right. Let's crack on anyway.
Think of a duck, like a duck. It's very elegant at the bottom. It's just legs doing this. Right, 3, 2, 1.
So we're back, and it's time to catch up with the Who Got the Assist mini league. And there's not been too much change at the top. Top of the league still is Richard Nyquist with Love Street FC. He's had a really good season so far. He's got 67 points this game week, which is pretty decent. He also had the double up of Petruchio and Doherty in defence, and had Alonso and Robertson, the likes of Fraser and Hazard, very similar to my team actually now. And he also made the same mistake as me, as in he captained Harry Kane, which is the only reason he didn't do better. But he is still ranked overall rank of 29. And yeah, having a great season. Really nice guy on Twitter as well. So yeah, well done, Richard. But he's got a couple of people on his tail actually. He's got Ashley Humphrey with Keita Moy Hart, scoring 70 points, only 1 point behind Richard. Another solid team, but Captain Hazard. So keeping the pace on Richard. We've got Kurt Goodwin with the Iron Laddies. Had a brilliant score of 91 points. Bringing him right up the charts, and he's only on 610 points now, but he's a 8 points behind Richard in terms of overall rank. Really decent score. Captain Hazard also had Callum Wilson and Doherty in his team as well. And then there's a Guy Vinaldium Leviosa on the same points as Kurt with 80. He scored 85 points this game week. And then you've got Greg Bradford with Electric Guitar. Joint on 5th with Andrew McKinnon being Arnautovic, both on 601 points. Just 1 point behind them as well is Simon Johnson, who also had a really good game week, scoring 94 points. He's now on 600 points, part of the 600 club. So well done, Simon.
Yeah, well done, everybody in the top 5. And Val Spallata, Richard. Very well done, guys. Very interesting to see how that's heating up and how that will develop over the course of the season. Looking at Ashley and Richard, it's looking like a bit of a duking there. But Guy and Kurt, just 7 and 8 points behind the top 2. So quite a lot going on and quite a lot of intrigue in the upper echelons. Just move on to a couple of things to mention. The first is that if you are based in London, we're doing an FPL London Christmas meetup. We and MathSafe FPL, Peter Blake, cordially invite you to this year's Christmas drinks. It's on the 14th of December, which is a Friday. You'll be pleased to know. At 7 p.m. at the Marylebone Sports Bar and Grill, which is just outside the Marylebone station. We've now up the deposit to 20 people, and we've also got a room which I'm christening the FPL Lounge for the evening. So if you can come, definitely send us an email as who got the assist at gmail.com, obviously, or let me know on Twitter if you're on that. But we were really good to see you, and we were very, very good just to chill out. I mean, we were there, and this is a nice link to the next thing, which is that Always Cheating were in London just over the last weekend. Nothing else really happened apart from that. It was just a great weekend altogether. And Always Cheating, brought a lot of people all together in the pub in Camden on Saturday night. It was just excellent. Everyone came, and we were all just FPL people having a chat about the game that we love and about all the little things that we love about football, and it was just fantastic to see everybody there. The final thing to mention is that we're going on the FPL show, aren't we, Nick, on the 1st of November? We don't know what we're talking about yet, but amazing to just go and do it. Meet James and Jules, and just be surrogate Southerns for the day. Do you want to say something?
Yeah, no, definitely looking forward to appearing on the FPL show. That's going to be very exciting for both of us to meet James and Jules as well. And yeah, looking forward to the London Xmas meetup. So if you guys can make it, then that will be brilliant. Yeah, so we've got a room, as Tom mentioned. Come and join us, come meet us. Yeah, we look forward to it. Not sure, Phil, if we're going to have a Yorkshire meetup anytime soon. Unfortunately, it's a little bit far for us to travel, but if you are able to make it to London, that would be awesome.
Cool. All right. Let's move on to the questions then. We've got 3 questions from the community, and then we're going to kind of wrap up the pod, and then we're going to spend a couple of minutes just answering your questions. Okay, everyone who's watching. But we're going to kind of just record the end of the pod, as it were, now, and then we'll kind of just chat to you guys for a little bit, if that's okay. Right, let's move on to questions then. The first question this week is about the Liverpool defensive duo. FPL Prince asks if we're interested in the Liverpool double up at the back, and John Thompson asked about Lovren specifically. What do you think about this? We've spoken about this a little bit already, this podcast, in terms of Robertson at least getting our vote. But the double up, Nick, do you think it's worthwhile? Would you do it?
I think there's a case for the double up. Robertson, for me, is looking essential. I think you could potentially double up with TAA, who's looked pretty deadly on the set pieces. But as I said, with Lovren now looking fit, did very, very well in the Manchester City game, going to be competing for starts. You've got Joe Gomez, who can play as a right back. There seems to be a fair bit of rotation risk now, actually, in that Liverpool defence. And it seems that perhaps only Robertson and Van Dijk can be assured of starts. Also, I think this is, as I said as well, this is a very crowded market. So to double up on Liverpool defence, you'd have to sacrifice perhaps another premium defender, perhaps Alonso. And I'm definitely not sacrificing Alonso. I don't know if you think it's worth doing a double up, and who you'd sacrifice in your team to fit another Liverpool defender in, Tom?
No, I mean, I've got Alonso, Robertson, Doherty, Duffy, and Wan-Bissaka, and Duffy and Wan-Bissaka are anchored to that bench. And I think those kind of 3, Alonso, Doherty, and Alonso, Doherty, and Robertson at the moment just seem pretty settled. Like they're going to be consistent. They're going to keep scoring points over the course of the season. It's difficult to see how it's going to work for people. Like some people may have indeed now, if that makes sense, I've moved the money forward. But I wouldn't be selling Alonso, that's for sure. There's a lot of chat about this on Twitter at the moment, like in terms of the fact that Alonso's stats over the last couple of weeks depreciated. I mean, yeah, fair enough. That's a fair comment. But equally, the ownership is still very high. He doesn't have the Champions League over the last couple of games. He's had Arsenal and Southampton, which haven't been the most ridiculous fixtures or anything. But he has been at home against a fairly decent team, away against a team that he would be maybe defending a tiny bit more. Maybe that's paying too much credit to Southampton. But at the same time, I wouldn't be selling Alonso. I just don't think that having Liverpool double up, the only thing I'd be looking at doing maybe moving Ederson out for Alisson. Just because I'd be thinking, well, Ederson was there because he's got me 4 clean sheets in a row. But he'd been there for that amazing run of fixtures. So maybe I'll swap him for Liverpool. Now they're running into a fairly decent kind of purple patch. In terms of Lovren, I don't think he's nailed. I think that would definitely be the abiding factor about him. If you're looking at, you kind of buy, have a Wolves player there. You could have a Duffy. You could have a Lascelles almost from Newcastle there. I'm not sure whether that is value for money to have a player who you be every week worrying about the rotation. I think that Gomez is going to get a lot of game time with Lovren, and they're going to rotate alongside the fixtures sort of thing. And TAA is probably in possession of that right back slot. So for me, I just don't think it's worth looking at Lovren, and having Liverpool double up is probably good, but it's one of those things. It's almost don't buy, don't sell. Like if you do want to have that Alisson in goal, that might be worth a look. But other than that, I think having Robertson's the key asset. And if you have TAA already, maybe definitely keep hold. But I wouldn't be looking at buying him in. Is that probably about right, Nick?
Yeah, I'm broadly agreeing with you on all those points. I think there's definitely a case. Perhaps you could do Edison for Allison, sort of a sort of goalkeeper swap in terms of the premium goalkeepers categories. I think Liverpool probably will keep more clean sheets in the next 5 or 6 games compared to Manchester City, though I don't know if it's worth sort of spending one of your transfers on it. Shall we move on to the next question then? Then this is a question for me, actually, it seems. And it's about Harry Kane and Karthik and Rao and FPL Lonesome have asked, what do we do with Kane? So obviously, I transferred him in this game week, and he scored us 1 point. I felt so down. I was walking for miles. I just didn't know what to do really. But at the moment, in terms of keeping Kane or getting rid of him, I'm between love and hate on him right now. It is a tough one. There you go, Tom. Um, I think with the Aguero ownership, not having Aguero for that home match against Burnley is pretty scary. However, it isn't like Kane has a bad fixture. We know that he's performed well in the past in those London derbies, and he certainly will be up for the game. I've also mentioned on the last pod about how Kane will deliver you 90 minutes, whilst Aguero will no doubt be hooked early around the 60-minute mark. However, the other problem with Kane this season is he appears to be playing a more withdrawn role this season. This was actually highlighted in his play against Cardiff on Match of the Day. And I did have a little quick look at his heat map for game week 1 to 8 from last season compared to game week 1 to 8 this season. And it's actually quite evident that, especially around the penalty box and in the penalty box, Kane isn't as active as he was last season. He's had less goal attempts. He's certainly looking a lot less prolific. And after the West Ham game as well, Spurs fixtures, they're okay, I guess. They got Manchester City, which is obviously a really tough game. Then it's Wolves, Crystal Palace, and then Chelsea. So it's not the best run for Spurs. It'll be a case of, do I keep Kane for this week, or if I've got a spare transfer lurking around still at the end of the international break, because I haven't got any other fires to put out, perhaps I'll just do a swap for Aguero and get Aguero in for that Burnley game.
Yeah, no, I can understand that. It's that was kind of why I didn't do it, because I was just thinking, well, I'm going to want Aguero by the end. Quick shout out here to Barnaby Jones, who triple captained Kane, and also a shout out to Adam Efferton, who triple captained Arnautovic this last game we just gone. So a couple of examples there of when taking the punt doesn't quite pay off. Moving on there, Nick. The differential power, FPL Centre, who's going to appear on this podcast very, very soon. Game week 14, we said for him. So look forward to him. If you could give him a follow on Twitter, he's at FPL Centre. He asks, how many differentials should chasers be looking to incorporate into our teams? And Ida Main also asks about that. That's an interesting one, isn't it, Nick? Because at the end of the day, differentials, you're always looking to them to fire you up the ranks, aren't you? But I guess the question is, how many should we be looking at? And should we be placing, talk about scarcity heuristic with Simon March? Like, to what extent should we be favouring differentials, or should we just be templating up at this point?
I think there's a lot of risk in favouring the differential, especially when you're chasing. You saw it last season, Tom. You're always you're always kind of a little bit behind the rest of us for the entire season, and then you had an opportunity to sort of catch up at the end of the season as well. But you made some gambles, and you went for those differentials over those players that perhaps you should have been investing in. You took that chance on Alexis Sanchez, despite the fact he was out of form. And I think when you're looking at differentials, if you fancy going off template, for instance, owning Sanchez instead of Hazard, that's definitely something we wouldn't recommend. Because especially considering the form that Hazard's in, he's definitely worth owning despite the high ownership. And I'd always suggest get Hazard in if you haven't got him. But then I think there are other differentials out there. The likes of KDB, Ali and Ericsson are all injured at the moment, but they'll be returning very soon. So it might be worth getting on those guys early before they start sort of being owned by the masses. I mentioned Ramsey as well, another little differential, only 1.8% ownership. And then there's also Gylfi Sigurdsson, who's been smashing it. And obviously I sold him stupidly, and he's since then he's got a 14-point and a 10-pointer, and he's got mentioned in the market forces, but his ownership's still 3.9%. So there's a few people out there that can be really decent differentials that are going to give you a little boost and get you climbing up the ranks. Against those people. I mean, I probably could have looked at a better differential than Maddison, who I put in my team last game week, and obviously he blanked. And I could have perhaps looked at a different differential, considering a lot of the top 10, 20k own Maddison at this time.
Yeah, I think from my perspective, like I know what you mean though, but where you were with Maddison, it kind of made sense to do that. Like, it kind of made sense to buy in the player who was looking like he's got good fixtures coming up. You can't really argue with that. I think for me, the reality is that from last year, what I learned, I was down in the millions at this point. I was having a very difficult season. Like, I was exposed to the Twitter fire hose for the first time and just having all these ideas, and it kind of led to paralysis almost. Whereas just making obvious moves and just templating up can definitely help you a lot. Like, because of the fact is that a lot of people who are above you, like, are those people, especially at this stage of the season, who aren't like FPL veterans. They're not people who are, playing the game like you are, like looking at Twitter, like listening to podcasts, etc., etc. They are people who are just kind of just breezing along, just sailing through, and having the template and having players in the template for a reason. And a lot of the time, just doing that means that your mini league, if you're focused on that, that's a little bit of a different story. But in terms of just your overall rank, just having template players is very useful in terms of getting you to a position in order to strike upwards. Like last season over Christmas, I got to 200k. I ended up at 300k. That's my worst ever finish in terms of being serious. But I got up to 200k just through making obvious moves, buying template players, like buying players who other players had. So Matt Doherty, for example, we spoke about him a fair bit, but he would be a player that I'd just be thinking, well, I'm just going to buy him in, because if you look around, like if you look around your mini leagues, you're going to see there's a lot of people who don't have that sort of player because I've never heard of him. He's not famous, right? So if they're looking through for a defender, they're going to look at this guy and they're not going to look at this guy. They're going to be thinking, well, unless he gets a really high score, like a Stephen Ward kind of thing, like they're not going to be thinking of buying him in probably. So having players like that the FPL community spots very early are players that are worth buying in and worth players who are worth your time, and they will lead you to being at least in an okay position, and then you can make something of it. Now the final question, Sweet Nick, is also kind of pertains to you a little bit. It's the end of Obi-Wan. Is he going to be struck down and made in something more powerful than you could ever imagine, Darth? Brad Francis asks whether we keep or remove Obi-Wan Bissaka. And you've been saying for a while, Nick, in our Slack, that you've been thinking about getting rid of him and moving him on. And you're a good person to ask about this question.
Well, I mentioned Crystal Palace's fixtures when I talked about Wilf Zaha during Market Forces. And yeah, Everton up next, which is, okay, I guess. But then after that, it's Arsenal, Chelsea, Spurs, Man U. So you're not going to be wanting to play this guy in any of those fixtures. So he is just going to be rotting on your bench if you do keep him. So there's no point. I don't necessarily think there's a place for him in my team at this moment in time, especially when we talked about all these other defenders that are performing better. And, there's the likes of Bennett, for instance. I could triple up on Wolves. And if I didn't have two Wolves defenders already, I'd certainly be looking at Bennett as a straight swap from Wan-Bissaka to Bennett, considering Bennett's, I think he's even cheaper than Wan-Bissaka is now, considering Wan-Bissaka's had a couple of price rises. I mean, it depends. I could upgrade him as well to the likes of Duffy if I was thinking about a little bit more strength in terms of rotation on my defence, because I do have I am playing a 4-4-2, and the rest of my bench is pretty crappy. I mean, I've got Hoberg and Success, and I can't see any of those guys being decent options on the bench as well. So maybe I'd want to upgrade Wan-Bissaka to the likes of Duffy, who is likely to perhaps get a few clean sheets in his next fixtures, or maybe even a sacking return. So it's a possibility that I am going to get rid of Wan-Bissaka, maybe upgrade him if I do sell Kane and get Kun in, because it gives me a little bit more free cash to spend. But it's certainly not. I've only got one free transfer for this international break, and it's not worth a hit for me, because it's not necessarily. It's going to be sort of a tidy up of the bench. And the great thing about Wan-Bissaka is he has been really good this season. He's got lots of bonus points. He's got a few clean sheets. He's looks quite exciting to watch, and he was very cheap, as in he was only 4.0. And when you're talking about points of value, you don't get much better than Wan-Bissaka, a player that we only spent 4 million on, who's getting us plenty of returns and is an option from the bench. But yeah, with the fixtures, not looking too good for Palace. there is an argument for getting rid of him.
Yeah, there definitely is. I mean, for me, you made the argument last week that with him, you're spending 0 million effectively. I think that's definitely the abiding factor. It's only it feels like a bit of a luxury transfer almost to be messing around with him because he's basically what second, third, maybe first bench at some point in the season. I can't really see the case for getting rid of him. Like my eye is always drawn to. I mean, the immediate set of fixtures are absolutely atrocious, and that's great because he's a 4.0 player. Like you've spent the minimum amount on that player. And you can have him just sat on your bench. But between game weeks, 14, 15, and 16, game week 14 is on the Saturday, game week 15 is on the Tuesday, game week 16 is on the Saturday. He's got 3 decent fixtures. He's got Burnley, Brighton, and West Ham. Game week 17, he's then got Leicester. I don't know, because in that kind of group of fixtures, it's very good to have that guy coming off the bench. Like over Christmas as well, like between game weeks 19 and 22, they play Cardiff, play Chelsea, Wolves, and then Watford over the Christmas period. So he's just one of those players that you just hold him for the season. Like, just ignore him. Like, the fact you've got him is great. Like, if he's got a good fixture, play him. If he doesn't, well, just have him on your bench. Like, you've effectively spent your 0 million. You've effectively spent your 0 million. I mean, effectively. Rather than effectively in a narrative neutral sense. And I think that's a decent player to have. And unless there's a compelling case, I don't know, to buy Pereira or something like that and play 4 or 5 at the back, he's the ideal sub. He's the ideal bench fodder. And I just can't see there's any case to get rid of that guy. I really can't. Sorry if I've just absolutely smashed you there. I didn't mean to.
I don't think you've smashed me in the slightest, Tom. I've got my viewpoint, you've got yours. I think in the next 5 or so fixtures, I'm not going to want to play a guy who's probably going to be playing for a team who's going to concede 3-4 goals, maybe even get a yellow card and get 0 points off the bench if the likes of Fraser doesn't play. So, there's an argument here and there, I think.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I just think that he's always going to be sitting second, third bench or whatever for me. So there's very low chance he's going to come on anyway. So you might as well just hold him for that and take price falls, price rise. He's always going to play for Crystal Palace, I think, at this point. All right. So those are the ends of the questions. So let's move on to the transfers and captains this week then, Nick. What are you doing and who is your captain going to be?
So, yeah, I'm backing Salah. I think I'm going to be putting on him. He's got the fixture. He's playing Huddersfield away. The talk is that he's out of form. He's out of sorts. He's not the same Salah as last season. But I think this is the perfect fixture for him to prove that he is still that same Salah and he can smash it still. And hopefully he does. Liverpool have had some really tough fixtures. They played the likes of Chelsea. They played the likes of Manchester City, Spurs. And now their run is improving a lot. And I'm hoping that the old Salah returns, but he's going to be my captain pick. In terms of transfers, I think if I make a transfer, which I probably will, it's likely to be the Kane-Kun switcheroo, and I jump back to Kane, back to Kun even.
Yeah, no, it definitely makes sense. And I think the Burnley have definitely given me enough encouragement in terms of their defensive stats to make me think I'm going to captain Kun and hope in the 60 minutes that he does play, he can do something. I don't know. I don't know whether it's worth captaining Salah yet. I think I'm happy to hold him, happy to have him. I'm just not sure that I'm going to be happy to give him the captain's armband. Like watching Liverpool, he is the least worst of the Fab Three, but there's not enough yet for me to think, yeah, I've got to captain this guy. So be it if I get absolutely punished, and so be it I'm due a blank captaincy. But I kind of feel like having Kun as my captain is a safe pick. Like, I'm happy with getting 6 points from my captain, frankly. And also, it might be nice to have people who have bought Kane and sold Kun who are too proud to make the switch back, like gain some points over them. Although, if you do own Kane, I think that's very decent. I think I'd be captaining him away at West Ham, to be honest. That's kind of that would have been justification for me keeping him.
Yeah, I think there's a bit of FOMO there in terms of Aguero, and you missed out obviously in game week 2 when he sort of smashed out Huddersfield, and I can't allow myself to be exposed to a similar incident. I think.
Yeah. I mean, that's also the same reasoning why I would have bought Kane. I just didn't do it. In terms of transfers, I'm not sure yet. I'm thinking I'm going to remove Camera, who's my third striker, get rid of him, put an Alcevic in there, and get rid of Walcott. Got to get rid of Walcott. Sorry, monkey. And put a 4.4 in who I need to make it all work. Maybe Masuaku or something like that. But I think that having the front three of Kun, Mitrovic, and Kun, Mitrovic, and Arnautovic is actually pretty decent. I think that might stand me in good stead over the next four. Well, there's a theme every week. Last week was Austin Powers, FPL Moron, got there first. This week, the theme has already been got by people on the live stream. But please let us know what you think the theme is, and I hope you've just about got there this week.
Yeah, congratulations to FPL Chancer. I think he was the first to get it. So, but yeah, we won't reveal it for now to ruin it for our regular listeners who like to guess it.
Yeah, well done, Dan. Right, just say who we are again. We are Who Got Assist. You can find us online at whogotassist.com and find us on Twitter at WGTA_FPL.
Yep, and if you want to join our league code is 516-441. We'll see you after the international break. So thanks for listening, and thanks for all the guys who've joined us live and have got involved in the chat as well. Yeah, it's been a unique experience. I think we both enjoyed it. How often we do this is another question, but yeah, it's been fun, guys.
Yep, and next week we'll be joined by Pet, who is the Football Index Guide and the proprietor of the Figcast next week. You can find him on Twitter at _FI Guide, and he is probably the best entry point if you're interested in investing in Football Index, 18 plus, of course. Okay, guys, we hope this assisted you, and we'll speak to you soon. Bye.
Bye.
Cool. There you go. All right, this how's everyone doing? Everyone okay? Hopefully that was vaguely enjoyable.
Yeah, thanks, guys. Glad you enjoyed it. Yeah, it was all good fun.
Yeah, I need to go. Unfortunately, I wish I could stick around. We'll try to do something like this in the future. But unfortunately, my girlfriend needs to go to bed, so I need to go.
Cool. All right. Cheers, guys. Bye-bye.
Cheers, guys. Bye.